When it comes to the word bird flu or avian flu, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the influenza virus. And right now, and throughout our lives and throughout the history of mankind, essentially, the influenza virus has been something that has affected us as humans. To give you an idea of influenza and just how complicated it can be, let me start off with some basic 101 flu type situations, type classroom here. So when it comes to the flu, or influenza as we tend to call it, there are essentially four different types: A, B, C, and D. We typically hear about flu A and flu B, which is usually what affects us throughout the year. Flu A is the one that typically affects us as adults. It's the one that tends to spread faster, and right now it's the one that's more prominent here in the US and around the world, at least the northern hemisphere. Flu B is also out there, and that affects humans as well, but it typically affects children, those under the age of 5, because they don't have the built-up immunity that we have as adults to fight it off. And so they tend to get B more than we do. We tend to get A more than they do. But there's another type of flu out there, type C, that can affect humans as well. In that type C, when you see the letter C, think about colds. Basically, it gives you cold-like symptoms, even though it's not a cold virus, it's an influenza virus, but it's mild, and it typically doesn't cause many problems. Now, of those three, A, B, and C, A are the ones that have been causing pandemics. If you remember back in 2009, we had the H1N1 pandemic that didn't turn out to be nearly as bad as the COVID pandemic, but it still caused a lot of issues around the world, and that has been happening throughout time. B typically does not cause pandemics. C, again, is mild. And then when it comes to flu type D, again, A, B, C, or D, type D, that typically affects cattle, sometimes other animals as well, but has not jumped to human. And the reason that's important, we'll figure out here in the next few minutes, because jumping to humans and then from humans to humans is when things really start to take a turn, and we really have to be concerned about it. Now, going through the first week of January, when you're looking at influenza, this season is turning out to be fairly typical, although it's starting to really accelerate. According to the CDC, they're estimating right now over 90 million people have been affected by the flu throughout this flu season, which started back in about October timeframe. Of those, 110,000 have been hospitalized. 4,700 have unfortunately died, and that includes 16 pediatric deaths. And so you can see it's starting to take its toll, and we're a little over probably halfway through this because the flu season can actually go through March and maybe even a little bit longer. But when it comes to the bird flu, is that something we need to be concerned about? And the answer is yes. We need to make sure we keep a close eye on it because it seems to be spreading a little bit, especially here in the U.S., because the U.S. is where most of those cases are taking place. Up until now, 67 cases here in the United States. There has been one death, which is very unfortunate. But what's happening here is the avian flu is essentially making its way through the steps of these viruses and how they affect us and other animals around the world. Now, typically, I talk about a four-step process. Viruses in animals will typically go from animal to the same type of animal. Let's talk about the bird flu. It goes from bird to bird. It goes from chicken to chicken. It stays in that species and it doesn't move much beyond there. That's phase one. Phase two is it goes from birds or one type of animal to another type of animal. And we have seen this bird flu, the H5N3, go from birds to cattle and then get into our dairy products. And so that's stage two, going from birds to other animals, or going from one type of animal to a second type of animal. Now stage three is that when it goes from animals to humans, and that's what we have right now. The bird flu, again, 67 cases in this country have gone from birds to humans, sometimes from dairy products or cattle contact to humans. That's stage three. The concern gets if it goes from stage four, which is going from human to human transmission, because that's when it gets real tricky. That's when things start to spread, and we saw that during the COVID pandemic, where it was stayed in the animals, at least we think it did. By the time we saw it, it was jumping from animal to human, and then it quickly jumped from human to human, spread around the world, and caused a pandemic. So, bottom line here, what can you do about the bird flu and how concerned should you be? You definitely want to be on top of things, and you want to make sure if there are sick or dead animals, particularly birds, that you don't come in direct contact with them. You have to be very careful about how you take care of them or dispose of them, because coming into contact with them Could mean getting the virus yourself. The other thing you can do is make sure you're vaccinated. Now, the flu vaccine's not going to do much for the bird flu vaccine or for the bird flu virus, but what it will do is make sure that if you do get the bird flu virus and you have the flu virus at the same time, the two won't meet inside your body and mutate to get that stage 4, that phase 4 of going from human to human, which makes it much easier if both viruses are inside your body. Now, the other thing you can do, the lessons we learned during the pandemic, stay as safe as possible. Get your vaccine like I mentioned. Remember, it's a respiratory virus, so make sure you mask up if you're around other people and you hear coughing or sneezing, or you yourself are coughing or sneezing. Better yet, stay home. A lot of hand washing, and hand sanitizer works well against this virus as well, so make sure you use that too. The main thing is to protect yourself, to protect other people. Make sure you do what you can to protect yourself against the winter flu that's here right now that affects us all the time. Getting vaccinated, thing number one, but you also do what you need to do to protect yourself against the bird flu, which is also out there, but is right now at a place that is a low risk for most of us, and we want to make sure we keep it that way.